to die. Oh, yes, I'll live in glory by and by. You may be seated. Brother James.
Good evening. This is not the way you usually see me up here. This is doing a Devo. So if I get stuck for words, I might just start leading a song. So if, that's right. Matter of fact, in the middle of it somewhere, maybe one of you will start singing a song to distract me. Well, I put together a few thoughts for tonight, and I want to start with a story from my younger days. For a few summers while I was in college, Joanna's aunt got me a job at AAA of Michigan. For 2 of those summers, I worked at the branch in Royal Oak. Royal Oak is sort of an affluent suburb of Detroit, where Aunt Jo was the manager. My job was to sell amusement park tickets, Cedar Point tickets mainly, route people on short trips around the state or into Ohio, take passport photos, and pass out maps and tour books. Joanna has a similar job at another branch. Royal Oak was a busy branch. We often had a long line of customers most of the day. And all the employees, which included the travel agency, insurance area, and then my area, local travel, stayed busy throughout the day. Working there was a joy. There was a lot of joking, good camaraderie, it was good humor. The days would go by very quickly. Hopefully you've had situations like that. I was either with a customer or restocking maps and tour books for the ladies that made up the triptychs, if you remember what a triptych is. You know, now we have GPS on our phones. Not a lot of people going for triptychs anymore. But it was a real pleasure to work there. It's a fond memory for me. All right, so I've told you that. We're going to put that aside. I'm going to tell you another story now. A few weeks ago, I went up with Houston and several of the teens here and some of the adults that are here tonight to Northridge Church to help some of the tornado victims. When we arrived, we received packs of water and food. We got loaded down with shovels and rakes and gloves and instructions on how we could lend a hand to the people in the neighborhoods. We made our way south from the church to the neighborhood where Wagner Ford meets I-75. And if you've passed by that section of the freeway, you see how hard that area was hit. The EF4 tornado came down Dixie Highway and made a slight turn and hopped the freeway and landed squarely on the Marathon station right there. So the first thing we saw as we passed by was a completely flattened Marathon station. And once it hit that, it cut a half-mile path down through the neighborhoods, destroying one house, and the house next door would be untouched or have very minor damage. Such is the way with tornadoes. After driving around for a few minutes, we focused on a fallen tree that had been cut up near a house that needed to be moved closer to the street. While some of us did that, others went door to door to check on the occupants and pass out food and water and see if there's anything we could do for them. Because at that time, they still had no power or water service. And once that tree was moved, we looked for other jobs to do. And a block over, another Christian group was helping a man clean up what was left of his garage. And you could tell the groups that were out helping because we all had matching T-shirts on. We had red T-shirts, and I can't remember what the color they were wearing. We joined them, and the job was soon completed. I personally made some small talk as we worked with the man we were helping. He said he was afraid a tree would fall on his truck during the storm. So he was on his way out the door to move his truck just in time to see his garage fly into the air. He said he was pushed back into the house. And he was still overwhelmed, not only by his experience, by the help he was receiving from the volunteers. And said to me, although he hadn't been in a church building for 40 years, he planned on visiting us as soon as things got back to normal. I assured him we'd find him a seat. He soon recommended neighbors for us to check on, and we cleaned up a few yards. We moved debris, busted up fences, parts of garages, siding, awnings, branches, while people still went around the neighborhood passing out food and water. I personally saw a piece of gutter that had flown off a house that had been flattened and driven into a tree trunk a quarter of the way in, like a machete. I saw a 2x2 piece of plywood, so about that big, about that thick, sticking halfway into the side of a house like a Chinese throwing star. There were fence posts next to that same house, normal metal fence posts that were bent all the way to the ground. All right, so you can imagine the power of something like that. The people we talked to, their eyes were still pretty wide in amazement. People were in shock, they were hurting, they were uncertain. We did the work, offered the food and water, words of encouragement, and moved on. At one point, a Chick-fil-A truck spotted us and asked if we were hungry and brought us chicken sandwiches. While we ate, another man was telling us how he felt like the house was levitating when the tornado passed by. He and his wife were in the bathtub with a blanket over him. He thought for sure the roof was going to blow off, but it didn't. His garage, however, did not survive, and although the walls were laying around his yard, he said he had no idea where the roof was. His chicken coop did not survive either, but the chickens did. He said, as a matter of fact, that was a thought he had in his mind when they were taking cover for the tornado, was should he go out and save his chickens? But he thought, no, and then the tornado. And then the tornado hit, so he said soon when the tornado passed, he looked and the coop was partially gone, but the chickens were wandering around the yard. But we didn't get to see them. I feel that the Lord blessed our efforts that day. After a few hours of work, we returned the supplies to Northridge and came home. Now, I was touched by our experience that day. I was very reflective. I felt that I, along with all the others that went, had done a good, meaningful Christian work. And I had some of the same feelings that I had when I worked at AAA, like those summers, even though for perhaps a different situation. I couldn't understand why. The more I thought about it, I guess it was the service to others, the busyness that I felt, and we all felt, the fact that we were helping. There was camaraderie amongst all of us. The time went very quickly, and it reminded me of my old summer job in that way. There was really no time or reason to complain. The work was before us, and folks needed our help. This is what we are supposed to be doing. The Lord's people are supposed to be out there helping those in need. I suppose this is one of the reasons why the parable of the Good Samaritan has such bite. The two people that should have been most likely to help the beaten man, the priest and the Levite, were unwilling to help. Only the stranger, the Samaritan, helped. Now, the Levite and the priest, were they pressed for time? Did they feel they were too busy? Did they not want the inconvenience? What excuses do we make up in such instances? I'd like to read you a passage of scripture here. This is from Matthew. When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, he will sit on his glorious throne. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate the people one from another, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me." Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you?" The king will reply, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." Then he will say to those on the left, "Depart from me, you who are cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not invite me in. I needed clothes, and you did not clothe me. I was sick and in prison, and you did not look after me." They also will answer, "Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or needing clothes or sick or in prison and did not help you?" He will reply, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did not do for one of the least of these, you did not do for me." Let me tell you another AAA story. The summer after Joanna and I got married, I was unable to get back to my beloved Royal Oak branch, and instead I had to go work at the East Detroit branch. Even though I had a mutual friend that worked there, it was a very different situation. East Detroit was not a busy branch. As a matter of fact, there were long periods of time where we had very few or no customers. The manager often created silly busy work for us to do. And it was crucial, or she was critical, if we were sitting at our stations as opposed to doing this busy work. Morale in the office was very poor, with a lot of gossiping, a lot of critiquing how others did their jobs. It seems when you're not busy enough, our focus turns to these things. When we would have a rare rush of customers, many of the employees would complain. Days would drag on, and needless to say, I did not enjoy working there. I suppose you can see how this illustration can extend to any group of people and even a congregation. The inactivity created a vacuum that was soon filled by disinterest, bitterness, quick criticism. We can major in the minors. It was very important to the manager that all the stacks of maps and tour books were very straight and even. We had to go through every day. Now, in the busy AAA branch, the maps and books were constantly being handed out and restocked, so that wasn't even a consideration. We were serving our customers. We weren't thinking about straight rows. It was furthest from our mind. I believe Jesus used the illustration of straining a gnat and swallowing a camel whole to describe this mentality. You focus on the small detail, but miss the larger concept. That's a pretty strong visual. Is it possible that you and I would rather hear a sermon encouraging us to be servants than actually being a servant? Servanthood is messy work, often tiring, and you will certainly get your hands dirty. Imagine the group at Centerville, many of you here tonight, if we went up in the van, the disaster relief folks, they put the rakes and the shovels in our van. We listened to how we can help with the cleanup efforts. We got the food and water, looked at each other, agreed it was good to be there that day, and then came directly home without going out in the neighborhood. And while we're on our way home, we criticized people who didn't come with us to hear the kinds of things we could do to help and not do it either. The same result is there, whether we heard the instructions or we didn't go. No one was helped. No lives were touched. If a game is being played, the most dissatisfying place to be is on the sideline. However, the sideline is the easiest vantage point to criticize the players. Our Christian walk is not a spectator sport. We're called to have an active faith. The Lord challenges us to be good neighbors and servants. We must look for opportunities to reflect that and to offer a cup of water to those who are thirsty. If you need anything tonight, if you need our prayers, we invite you to come as we stand and sing.